The content discussed in this program is based on publicly accessible historical documents, academic research, and verifiable archival records. All statements presented are intended as historical analysis and cultural exploration, and are offered in the spirit of scholarly and educational exchange. This program does not express any contemporary political positions, nor does it promote ideological viewpoints or value judgments. It does not target, criticize, or assign blame to any country, nation, or ethnic group. The discussion is confined to historical facts and their contextual background, with full respect for diverse academic perspectives and interpretative approaches. Historical subjects are inherently complex and open to multiple interpretations. The perspectives presented in this program are grounded in currently available sources and do not constitute commentary on present-day issues or political positions. Listeners are encouraged to engage with the material thoughtfully and with an open, rational mindset.
Hey dear friends, welcome back to another episode of Interesting Chinese Culture. Have you ever wondered why Chinese people often say that China has 5,000 years of civilization? Where does that number really come from? 5,000 years ago, most parts of the world were still in very early stages of development. 5,000 years is an almost unimaginable stretch of time. If we count back 5,000 years from today, the ancient Egyptians were building pyramids, and the Sumerians in Mesopotamia had just created cuneiform writing. So what was happening on the land of China that allows Chinese people to confidently trace their history back so far? What did they leave behind? On what basis does China claim 5,000 years of civilization? Today, we are going to talk about whether Chinese history really stretches back that far. This question is not only asked by you. Many historians and archaeologists have also been studying and debating it for a long time. If we look purely at archaeological dating, the roots of Chinese civilization can be traced back to the late Neolithic period, around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. You might wonder why Chinese people take pride in the phrase 5,000 years of civilization. That span of time is extremely long. It is several times longer than the history of the Roman Empire. It is about 3,000 years earlier than the birth of Christianity. It is even earlier than the age of the pyramids in ancient Egypt. As a country with such a long past, China views time differently from younger nations. When we say 5,000 years, we are not simply talking about a long timeline. We are talking about the resilience of a civilization. It has gone through countless wars, divisions, and invasions, yet each time, it has recovered like wild grass, and it has passed down its core cultural codes from generation to generation. Even today, you can still see traces of that ancient heritage in the daily lives of Chinese people. So how was this number of 5,000 years calculated? Let us start from the beginning. The starting point of 5,000 years usually refers to what is called the legendary period of China, around 3,000 years before the Common Era. At that time, there was no written language yet, but later historical texts recorded the names of several great figures. The most important of them is the Yellow Emperor. If you have listened to my earlier episodes, you are probably familiar with this name. If not, that is completely fine. Let me briefly explain. According to Sima Qian, in the records of the Grand Historian, the Yellow Emperor was the common leader of many tribes. He defeated the Yan Emperor and Qiyu, unified the Central Plains, and was later honored as the ancestor of the Chinese people. In traditional Chinese historical writing, the Xia dynasty is regarded as the first hereditary dynasty. The discovery of oracle bone inscriptions from the Shang dynasty pushed the history of Chinese writing back more than 3,000 years. These inscriptions were not only records of divination, they reflected the political structure of the time, the system of rituals and sacrifices, the frequency of wars, agricultural production, and the belief in ancestral spirits. This shows that by the Shan dynasty, Chinese civilization already had three core elements: writing, a state structure, and a religious order. Although in strict historical terms, the era of the Yellow Emperor lacks written evidence from the same period and appears more like a story passed down orally, the stories of the Yellow Emperor and the Yan Emperor were frequently mentioned in later dynasties. In other words, even without written records from that early time, this part of history was understood to have truly existed in the memory and tradition of later generations. After several generations following the Yellow Emperor, history moves into the era of Yao, Shun, and Yu. This story is also beautiful. It tells us that when Yao grew old, he did not pass the throne to his own son. Instead, he chose Shun, the man known for the highest moral character, to succeed him. When Shun became old, he passed the position to Yu, who had achieved great success in controlling the floods. This practice of giving power to someone worthy rather than to one's own child was later called abdication. It became an ideal model in Chinese political thought. Yu's greatest achievement was controlling the devastating floods. He spent 13 years on this task. It is said that he passed by his own home 3 times and never went inside. This spirit of putting the collective good above personal life later became deeply rooted in Chinese values. After Yu died, his son Qi broke the tradition of abdication and directly inherited power. He established the first hereditary dynasty in Chinese history, the Xia dynasty. From this point on, the pattern of family rule was set. Power was passed down within one family from generation to generation. This model continued for more than 4,000 years, until the fall of the Qing dynasty. For a long time, the Xia dynasty existed mainly in legend, but later, the discovery of the Erlitou site in Henan made the story more believable. At that site, archaeologists found large palace foundations, bronze workshops, and noble tombs. The dating is around 2,000 years before the Common Era, which matches the middle and late period of the Xia dynasty recorded in ancient texts. Because of this, many scholars today believe that Erlitou was the capital of the Xia dynasty. After the Xia came the Shang dynasty. If the Xia dynasty still feels a little unclear, the Shang dynasty is the first Chinese dynasty with written evidence from its own time. In the late Qing dynasty, farmers in Xiaotun village in Anyang, Henan, often dug up ancient bones while working in the fields. Strange symbols were carved on them. The farmers thought they were dragon bones and ground them into powder to sell as medicine. Later, scholars realized that those symbols were actually writing from more than 3,000 years ago. This was the famous oracle bone script. These characters were carved on turtle shells and animal bones. Most of the content recorded the Shang king's divinations. The questions included what the weather would be like, whether they would win a war, whether the harvest would be good, and even whether the queen would give birth to a boy or a girl. Because of these oracle bones, we know for certain that the Shang dynasty existed, and we can even see real pieces of daily life from that time. Shang society had a strong religious character. The Shang king was not only the political leader, but also the highest priest. They worshipped their ancestors and many gods. The highest god, this concept of the mandate of heaven, later became central to Chinese political thought. It also gave people a moral reason to resist tyranny, because such resistance could be seen as carrying out the will of heaven. By the time of the Zhou dynasty, the basic framework of Chinese civilization began to take shape. The Zhou introduced the system of rites and music, which emphasized social hierarchy and order. Rites were not just about politeness. They were a complete political and ethical structure. From the Son of Heaven to the feudal lords, and then to the scholar officials, each had defined roles and responsibilities. Music was used to harmonize social relations and promote balance within order. The Zhou also established the clan system, using blood ties to maintain the structure of the state. Ideas such as family consciousness, ancestor worship, and lineage inheritance deeply influenced the next 2,000 years. It can be said that the idea of family and state as one structure in Chinese culture gradually became fixed during the Zhou dynasty. In terms of governance, the Zhou practiced the feudal system. Land and people were granted to relatives and meritorious officials, allowing them to establish regional states that protected the central authority. To maintain this hierarchy, the Zhou also created a very detailed system of rituals known as the rites of Zhou. These rules guided every stage of life, from birth to adulthood, marriage, and death. They also specified what different ranks of people should wear, what music they should play, and what vessels they should use during sacrifices, banquets, and audiences with the Son of Heaven. In this way, morality and politics were fully integrated into daily life. From childhood, people understood their place in society and learned to respect rules. The influence of this ritual civilization continues even today. The Chinese emphasis on respect for elders, awareness of hierarchy, and behaving with proper measure can all be traced back to the Zhou dynasty.
In the later period of the Zhou dynasty, the central power began to decline. The feudal states fought against one another, and China entered the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period. This is also the historical background of the book we are currently talking about, Records of the Eastern Zhou States. It was a time of great turmoil in Chinese history, but at the same time, it was also a golden age of intellectual explosion. Because the old order had collapsed, people began to rethink how society should be organized and how a person should live. This led to what is known as the period of 100 schools of thought. The Spring and Autumn and Warring States period was the peak of Chinese intellectual history. The feudal lords controlled their own territories, and wars were frequent. Yet it was precisely in this kind of social chaos that ideas grew rapidly. Confucianism, Taoism, Mohism, legalism, and other schools emerged, each offering different explanations about human nature, politics, and the order of the universe. Confucianism emphasized moral order and benevolence. Taoism emphasized nature and non-interference. Legalism focused on systems and authority. Mohism promoted universal love and respect for the worthy. These were not abstract philosophies. They were real proposals for how to govern a state. The most famous figure, of course, is Confucius. Most people are familiar with his name. His reputation is known around the world, and his wisdom has continued to influence people up to today. Even in well-known Chinese mythological stories such as Journey to the West and Investiture of the Gods, you can see traces of Confucius. This shows how strong his influence has been in Chinese history. Confucius lived in the late Spring and Autumn period. He admired the ritual and music civilization of the early Zhou dynasty and believed it represented an ideal society. When he saw that rituals had collapsed and wars were constant, he traveled from state to state, hoping to persuade rulers to restore the rights of Zhou. Politically, he was not very successful, but he accomplished something even more important. He started the tradition of private teaching and made education available to ordinary people, not just to nobles. He taught his students to be kind, to respect their parents, to keep their promises, and to treat others as they wished to be treated. After Confucius passed away, his students compiled his words into a book called the Analects. For more than 2,000 years afterward, Confucian thought became the basic moral guideline and code of conduct for Chinese people. Around the same time, there were Laozi and Zhuangzi, who founded the Taoist school. If Confucianism teaches you how to live in society, Taoism teaches you how to live in harmony with nature. Laozi believed that there is a fundamental principle in the universe called the Tao. It cannot be fully described, but it governs everything. People should follow the Tao and practice non-interference, meaning they should not force things, but instead follow their natural course. He left behind a work of about 5,000 characters called the Tao Te Ching, filled with profound ideas. Zhuangzi was more romantic in style. Through imaginative stories and parables, he explored what freedom means, how all things can be seen as equal, how to view life and death, and how to rise above worldly troubles. Besides Confucianism and Taoism, there was Mohism, represented by Mozi, who advocated universal love and opposition to aggressive war, and who encouraged frugality and practical action. There was also legalism, represented by Han Feizi, who believed that strict laws and clear systems were necessary to govern a state, and who emphasized the importance of authority and institutional control. These schools debated with one another and also inspired one another. Together, they formed the foundation of Chinese thought. Later in history, whenever Chinese people faced difficult questions, they could often find insight in these ancient teachings. This period in Chinese history is called the time of 100 schools of thought. The ideas that emerged during this time became extremely influential. It was also under the influence of these debates that the state of Qin adopted legalist principles and transformed itself into an efficient military power. In the year 221, before the Common Era, Qin unified China. If we talk about the most famous emperor in Chinese history, it would likely be Qin Shi Huang. After establishing the Qin dynasty, he carried out several major reforms. He unified the writing system so that although people in different regions spoke with different accents, they all wrote the same characters. He standardized weights and measures, making carriage widths, currency, and measuring tools consistent across the land. These policies truly turned China into a unified administrative whole. It is somewhat like having one currency used across Europe and being able to communicate in a shared language. For many people, this was a very practical change. However, he also carried out highly controversial actions. In order to control thought, he ordered the burning of many privately owned books of poetry and history. He also executed scholars and practitioners who criticized him. This event is known as the burning of books and the execution of scholars. It is often seen as the biggest stain on his rule and is still discussed today. Because of this action, some important literary works were destroyed. Later, Qin Shi Huang also mobilized enormous labor to build the Great Wall. Today, the Great Wall is a place that many visitors to China want to see and photograph. In its earliest historical role, it was built to defend against northern nomadic tribes. The Qin dynasty lasted only 15 years before it collapsed. Yet the centralized system it created, along with the unified standards it established, continued long after its fall. Although short-lived, the Qin dynasty completed the unification of writing, weights and measures, currency, and carriage tracks. This unification was not only an improvement in administrative efficiency, but also a key step in cultural integration.
After the Qin dynasty came the Han dynasty. This was the dynasty that gave China's main ethnic group its name. The Han inherited the political system of Qin, and on that foundation it established Confucianism as the official ideology. During the Han period, the Silk Road was opened, creating trade connections with Central Asia and even regions farther away. At this stage, Chinese civilization began to have continuous interaction with the outside world. The concept of the Han people gradually took shape during this time. Now, here is a question for all of you. Do you know how far the Silk Road once reached? The answer is that the Silk Road eventually reached as far as Africa. The Han dynasty lasted more than 400 years and is divided into the Western Han and the Eastern Han. In the early years of the Han, the emperors learned from the fall of Qin. They adopted policies that allowed the people to rest and recover, helping society rebuild after years of war. By the time of Emperor Wu of Han, the country had become very strong. He launched campaigns against the Xiongnu and pushed them far to the north of the desert. At this point, you might wonder who the Xiongnu were. The Xiongnu were a nomadic people active on the Mongolian plateau in ancient times. They were representatives of steppe nomadic civilization and one of the most important northern rivals in Chinese history. Geographically, their main area of activity was the Mongolian plateau, including what is now Mongolia, the Inner Mongolia region of China, and the areas extending south toward the Yin Mountains. Archaeological discoveries and studies of ancient tomb remains show that the Xiongnu were a multi-ethnic and multi-tribal nomadic alliance. They originated on the Mongolian plateau and were the strongest opponents of the Han dynasty. Later, some of them merged into Chinese society, while others moved westward into Europe and influenced world history. This may also help explain why certain cultural habits in some European regions appear surprisingly similar to some Chinese traditions. At the same time, Emperor Wu of Han adopted the advice of Dong Zhongshu. He set aside other schools of thought and honored Confucianism as the sole orthodox doctrine. From that point on, Confucian classics became required reading for scholars, and Confucian ethics became the basic code of conduct for society. During the Han dynasty, Zhang Qian was sent on a mission to the western regions. His original goal was to form alliances against the Xiongnu. Although he did not achieve that military objective, he unexpectedly opened a route to the west. Chinese silk traveled along this road in a steady flow to Central Asia, West Asia, and even as far as the Roman Empire. This was the famous Silk Road. Through this route, China and the outside world began frequent exchanges. Fruits such as grapes, walnuts, and pomegranates were introduced into China from the western regions. The Han dynasty was also a brilliant age for literature and historical writing. Sima Qian endured great humiliation to complete the Records of the Grand Historian, the first comprehensive historical work written in biographical form in China. This book is not only a serious historical record, but also a work of literary beauty. It is often praised as an unmatched masterpiece among historians. After the fall of the Han dynasty, China entered a period of division that lasted more than 300 years, known as the Three Kingdoms, the Two Jin, and the Northern and Southern dynasties. This was another chaotic era in Chinese history, with frequent changes of power and constant warfare. Nomadic peoples from the north entered the Central Plains, bringing with them the spirit of the steppe. In the south, Han scholars sought comfort in landscapes and personal reflection. Buddhism had been introduced into China during the Eastern Han period, and in this era it began to spread widely. From emperors to common people, many turned to Buddhism, hoping for good results in the next life. To show their devotion, people carved large numbers of grottos, such as the Yangang grottos and the Longmen grottos. The massive Buddha statues inside them still leave visitors in awe today. Taoism also formally developed during this time. It combined Taoist philosophy with folk beliefs, seeking immortality and practicing alchemy and ritual symbols. The long period of division between North and South was eventually ended by the Sui dynasty. Although the Sui dynasty was also short-lived, it accomplished a major project, the construction of the Grand Canal.
This north-south waterway connected the wealthy regions of the lower Yangtze River with the political centers in the north. It played a crucial role in later economic development and brought lasting changes to history and trade. After the Sui dynasty came the Tang dynasty. The Tang dynasty was one of the most brilliant and glorious periods in Chinese history. It was also one of the most powerful empires in the world at that time. The capital, Chang'an, was a truly international metropolis. The city alone was divided into 110 administrative wards. Merchants, students, monks, and artists from many different countries gathered there. The politics of the Tang dynasty were relatively open. Emperor Taizong of Tang, Li Shimin, was especially known for listening to advice and appointing capable officials. He created what later generations called the reign of Zhenguan. During this period, China also saw its first female emperor. Empress Wu Zishan broke tradition and became the only woman in Chinese history to officially ascend the throne as emperor. Her very existence shows how relatively open Tang society was. Merchants and scholars from Central Asia, Persia, and the Arab world were active in Chang'an. The imperial examination system became more mature during this time. Ordinary scholars could enter the political system through exams, which increased social mobility. In a way, this system laid the foundation for what later became the most important exam in modern China, the National College Entrance Examination. Even today, this exam can change a person's destiny. Children growing up in rural areas can, through hard study and strong performance on this exam, go to larger cities for education and find better jobs, bringing real change to their families. At the same time, agricultural technology improved, water control projects were strengthened, and the equal field system helped guarantee agricultural production. The open spirit of the Tang dynasty gave Chinese civilization a strong ability to absorb outside influences. Culturally, the Tang was an age of poetry. Many literary works and famous writers emerged during this period. Religious life in the Tang dynasty was also very rich. Buddhism reached its peak. The well-known novel Journey to the West was written later, but it is set in this period. Unlike the fictional monk in that story, the historical monk Huanzang was not weak or timid. He was a determined and courageous master. He risked his life and traveled tens of thousands of miles alone to India to obtain Buddhist scriptures. He brought back a large number of texts and organized their translation, making great contributions to cultural exchange between China and India. Taoism was also highly respected, partly because the Tang emperors had the surname Li and claimed descent from Laozi, whose personal name was Li Er. In addition, religions that came from Persia, such as Zoroastrianism, Nestorian Christianity, and Manichaeism, also had their own temples in Chang'an. Life in the Tang dynasty was also very interesting. Women at that time had relatively high status. They could appear in public, ride horses, and play polo. Their clothing was also quite open compared to other periods. The habit of drinking tea began to spread widely across the country, and tea drinking became an art. The history of tea drinking in China goes back even earlier. During the Western Zhou period, around 3,000 years ago, tea began to be used as a beverage. In the Tang dynasty, people drank what was called boiled tea. They would roast tea cakes, grind them into powder, and boil them in water. In 1987, a set of golden and silver tea utensils used by a Tang emperor was discovered in the underground palace of Faimen Temple in Shanxi. The set included a tea grinder, a tea sieve, and a silver container. The craftsmanship was astonishing. This shows that tea culture at that time had already become highly refined, from the imperial court down to ordinary people. I know that because of the global spread of culture, when many people hear the term tea ceremony, they first think of Japan. But Chinese tea culture developed much earlier, and tea in Japan was originally introduced from China. The earliest people to bring tea to Japan were Japanese envoys and monks who were sent to study in the Tang dynasty. According to Japanese records, in the year 729, the Japanese emperor offered tea to monks in the palace. This is considered one of the earliest official records of tea in Japan. In the year 805, a Japanese monk named Saicho returned from studying in Tang China and brought back tea seeds. He planted them near Hayoshi Shrine on Mount Hiei in Kyoto, which is said to be the earliest tea garden in Japan. In the year 815, Emperor Saga of Japan visited a temple. A monk named Aichu, who had lived in China for more than 30 years, personally prepared boiled tea and served it to the emperor. The emperor was pleased and ordered tea to be planted in several areas near Kyoto and presented annually as tribute. During the Heian period in Japan, centered around Emperor Saga and those monks who had studied in Tang China. There was a strong wave of learning from Tang culture. Tea drinking was part of this movement. In Japanese history, this is known as the Konin tea style. This marked the beginning of tea drinking in Japan. If we look at these timelines together, the picture becomes clear. If we count from the Western Zhou period, Chinese tea drinking has a history of more than 3,000 years. If we count from the formation of a mature tea culture in the Tang dynasty, it still has a history of more than 1,200 years. Although Japan came into contact with tea earlier, the development of its own distinctive tea ceremony did not fully form until the 16th century, during the time of Sen no Rikyu. In other words, when Chinese tea culture had already reached its peak in the Song dynasty, Japan was just beginning to relearn the whisk tea method from China. And when China had shifted to loose-leaf brewing in the Ming dynasty, Japan was still absorbing and reshaping what it had learned from the Song and Yuan periods, eventually transforming it into its own unique tradition. So, when we look at the Tang dynasty, this most prosperous period in Chinese history, everything seems to have been developing so well. Then how did it finally fall? The fall of the Tang dynasty was not a sudden accident. It was more like a long, slow collapse that began from within. It was like a grand and magnificent mansion. After standing for too many years, the pillars were eaten hollow by insects, the walls began to crack, and when a great storm finally came, the whole structure fell apart. The turning point was the An Lashan Rebellion. This rebellion broke out during the height of the Tang dynasty, in the reign of Emperor Xuanzong Lilongji, during the Kaiyuan and Tianbao years. The war lasted for 8 full years. Although the Tang court eventually suppressed the rebellion, the cost was enormous. After the An Lashan Rebellion, the Tang dynasty never truly recovered. Outside the court, there were regional military governors who did not fully obey the central government. One day they would show loyalty, the next day they might rebel, and the day after that they might submit again. It went back and forth. Does that sound familiar? It feels very similar to the chaos of the Spring and Autumn and Warring States periods. In fact, the decline of many dynasties in Chinese history follows a similar pattern. Factional struggles at court continued for decades. Finally, in the year 874, during the reign of Emperor Xizong of Tang, a nationwide peasant uprising broke out. In the year 881, Huang Chao captured Chang'an. Emperor Xizong fled in fear. Huang Chao declared himself emperor in Chang'an and named his state Great Qi. The decline of every dynasty is often linked to weak leadership. The Shang dynasty had King Zhou. The Qin dynasty had Qin Ershi, Hu Hai. The Sui dynasty had Yang Guang. And in the final years of the Tang dynasty, there was Zhu Wen, who played a key role in bringing it to an end. After the fall of the Tang dynasty, China once again entered a period of division known as the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms. This time, however, the chaos did not last very long. After that came the Song dynasty. The Song dynasty was relatively weak in military terms. In the north, there were strong rivals such as the Liao, the Jin, and the Western Xia. Eventually, the capital of the northern Song, Bianjing, was captured by Jin forces and the emperor was taken prisoner. The remaining royal family fled south and established the southern Song. Although militarily weaker, the Song dynasty reached an unprecedented height in economy and culture. The Song period saw breakthroughs in economy and technology. The famous movable type printing was invented during this time. Printing became widespread, books circulated in large numbers, and urban culture flourished. City commerce was highly developed, with night markets and busy commercial streets. In many ways, the Song dynasty showed early signs of a market economy. Despite constant military pressure from the north, cultural creativity was extremely vibrant. Song cities were very prosperous. If you are familiar with art, you probably know the famous painting Along the River during the Qingming Festival by the northern Song painter Zhang Ziduan. This painting shows the street scene of Bianjing, with crowded markets and busy shops. It is often used in discussions about Chinese culture. At the same time, the Song dynasty marked a major development in Chinese cuisine. If people today admire Chinese food, they should thank the Song period. It was during this lively age of night markets that many stir-fried dishes became popular. Iron woks became widely used, and cooking oil was more available, which changed the way people prepared food. After the Song dynasty came the Yuan dynasty, established by the Mongols. This was the first unified dynasty in Chinese history founded by a minority ethnic group. At this point, some people may wonder whether the Mongols of the Yuan dynasty were the same as the Xiongnu we mentioned earlier. Since both were nomadic peoples of the northern grasslands who rode horses and practiced archery, many assume that the Xiongnu were the ancestors of the Mongols and that the Mongols were their descendants. It sounds reasonable, but historically it is not accurate. The Xiongnu were not Mongols, and the Mongols were not Xiongnu. They were two completely different groups. It is like comparing a tiger and a lion. Both are powerful animals that live on the grasslands, but they are not the same species. Around the Qin and Han periods, roughly in the 3rd century before the Common Era, there were two powerful nomadic groups on the Mongolian plateau. One was called the Xiongnu, and the other was called the Donghu. The Xiongnu originated around the Hetao Plain and the areas north and south of the Yin Mountains, near the Great Bend of the Yellow River. The Donghu, on the other hand, lived to the east of the Xiongnu, in what is now eastern Inner Mongolia and the Greater Khingan Range. Later in history, parts of the Xiongnu became integrated into the Han population, some became associated with the Xianbei, and some moved westward toward Europe. The Mongols, however, emerged from the forested regions of the Greater Khingan Range. Over time, they grew stronger, and under Genghis Khan, they went on to change the course of world history. The territory of the Yuan dynasty was larger than ever before. At its height, it stretched across the entire Eurasian continent. Large numbers of Arabs and Persians came to China, bringing knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. It was also during this period that China's 4 great inventions spread further to the west. Friends, do you know what the 4 great inventions of China are? The first is papermaking. The improved papermaking technique is usually dated to the year 105, when Kai Lin of the Eastern Han dynasty refined the method. After paper was invented in China, it began to travel west along the Silk Road quite early. However, what truly accelerated its spread was a war. In the year 751, the Tang dynasty fought a battle against the Arab Empire, which at the time was called the Abbasid Caliphate, at Talas in Central Asia. The Tang army was defeated, and more than 20,000 soldiers were captured. Among the captives were many craftsmen, including papermakers. The Arabs gathered these craftsmen in Samarkand and had them produce paper. The paper made in Samarkand was of high quality and quickly became famous. It became the most important papermaking center outside China at that time. From there, papermaking technology moved westward step by step along the Silk Road. In 794, Baghdad established a paper mill and invited Chinese craftsmen. In the 9th century, Damascus had large paper workshops. In 1150, under Arab rule, Spain built the first paper mill in Europe. After that, France, Italy, Germany, and England followed. In this way, papermaking spread throughout Europe. The second invention is printing. Printing developed in 2 stages. The first was woodblock printing. Characters were carved in reverse onto wooden boards, ink was applied, and the text was pressed onto paper like a stamp. By the Tang dynasty, woodblock printing was already widely used, but it had a problem. If one character was carved incorrectly, the entire block had to be discarded, and if you wanted to print a new book, you had to carve everything again from the beginning. During the Northern Song dynasty, between the years 1041 and 1048, a commoner named Bai Sheng invented movable type printing. He made small clay blocks, each carved with a single character. After firing them to make them hard, they could be reused. When printing a book, the needed characters were arranged together and fixed in place. After printing, they could be taken apart and used again. It was like building a house with blocks. After finishing, you could dismantle it and build something new. At that time, the Mongols established an empire that stretched across Eurasia. Travel between east and west became more open. Many European travelers came to China along the Silk Road and saw with their own eyes how the Chinese used woodblocks and movable type to print books, paper money, and playing cards. In the 14th century, Europeans began using woodblock printing. In the 15th century, Johannes Gutenberg in Germany developed metal movable type printing based on existing knowledge. In 1454, he printed the first major movable type edition in Europe, the Bible. Some scholars believe that Gutenberg may have been inspired by information or printed materials brought back by travelers from China. Of course, he improved the technology. He used an alloy of lead, tin, and antimony for the type, which was more durable, and he modified the ink. This became Europe's own printing system. The third invention is gunpowder. Gunpowder was discovered by Taoist alchemists while they were trying to create an elixir of immortality. They mixed sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal, hoping to make a pill for eternal life. Instead, they found that the mixture could explode. By the Tang dynasty, there were already written records of gunpowder formulas. In the Song dynasty, gunpowder began to be used in warfare. Song engineers invented fire lances, rockets, and explosive bombs. The fire lance used a bamboo tube as a barrel. Inside, they placed gunpowder in small stones. When ignited, the stones were shot out. This was the earliest form of a tube-shaped firearm in the world. Later, the Mongols learned gunpowder technology. During their westward campaigns, they brought it to the Arab world, and from there it reached Europe. The appearance of gunpowder changed warfare. Armor worn by knights could not stop bullets. Castle walls could not withstand cannons. Feudal systems in Europe were deeply affected. The Mongols played a key role in bringing gunpowder to the West on a large scale. During their campaigns, they carried gunpowder weapons across Asia. In 1220, Genghis Khan used gunpowder weapons when attacking Samarkand. In the mid-13th century, during Hulagu's Western expedition, more than 1,000 craftsmen capable of making firearms were brought from China. This is how firearm production methods spread to Central Asia and then to Europe. Europeans learned about gunpowder mainly through wars with Arab forces. Between 1325 and 1344, Arab forces used a weapon called madfa in battles in Spain. The Spanish captured these weapons and copied them, producing some of the earliest handheld firearms in Europe. Soon after, France in 1338, England in 1340, and Germany in 1346 all began developing firearms. In this way, gunpowder technology spread throughout Europe. The last invention is the compass. The Chinese discovered very early that magnetic stones could indicate direction. This can be traced back more than 2,000 years to the Warring States period. At that time, there was a device called the south-pointing spoon. A piece of lodestone was shaped like a spoon and placed on a smooth bronze plate. The handle of the spoon would point south. However, this device was heavy and not convenient to carry. During the Song dynasty, people began to magnetize iron needles with lodestone and turn them into compasses. The Song Chinese used the compass for navigation at sea. This was the first time in human history that there was a tool for navigation that could work in all weather conditions. Before that, sailors relied on the stars. On cloudy days, they had no way to find direction. With the compass, ships could stay on course even on the open ocean. Long-distance sea voyages finally became possible. During the Ming dynasty, Zheng He sailed to the western oceans. His fleets reached as far as the east coast of Africa, and they relied on the compass. After the compass spread to Europe, it helped bring about the age of exploration. Columbus discovering the New World and Magellan sailing around the globe were both made possible by this small device. By the Song period, Chinese ships were already widely using the compass for navigation. Arab merchants who traded in the Indian Ocean saw Chinese sailors using this tool to find their way even in fog and cloudy weather. They were amazed and learned it. After the Arabs mastered it, they quickly used it on their own trading ships. Around 1180, the compass was passed from the Arab world to Europe. After the Yuan dynasty came the Ming dynasty. The Ming was the last feudal dynasty established by the Han people. After Zhu Yuanzhang founded the Ming dynasty, he took many measures to restore production and develop the economy. He also sent his sons to different regions as feudal princes to help defend the central government. Ming emperors had very different personalities. Some did not attend court for decades. Some preferred carpentry to governing. Others worked hard to manage state affairs. One major event of the Ming dynasty was Zheng He's voyages to the western oceans. From 1405 to 1433, Zheng He led the largest fleet in the world at that time on 7 voyages, reaching as far as the east coast of Africa. The fleet carried Chinese silk, porcelain, and tea, and brought back spices, precious stones, and exotic animals. During the Ming dynasty, 3 great novels were completed: Romance of the Three Kingdoms by Luo Guanzhang, Water Margin by Xi Naiyan, and Journey to the West by Wu Cheng'en. These works remain some of the most familiar stories to Chinese people today. We will talk about them in more detail when we reach the relevant historical periods. Some tell stories of historical heroes, some describe outlaw heroes, and some explore mythical worlds, but all are filled with human emotion and imagination. At this point, some friends might feel confused. Is Journey to the West not set in the Tang dynasty? What does it have to do with the Ming dynasty? The simple explanation is that Journey to the West is a mythological novel written during the Ming Dynasty, even though its story is set in the Tang Dynasty. So who was one of the most influential figures of the Ming period? The Ming Dynasty produced a famous thinker named Wang Yangming. He developed Neo-Confucianism further and founded the School of Mind. He proposed the ideas of extending innate knowledge and the unity of knowledge and action. He believed that every person has innate moral knowledge in the heart, and by awakening it, anyone can become a sage. His teachings had a great impact and later spread to Japan and Korea. In the late Ming period, political corruption became serious and people suffered greatly. At the same time, the Little Ice Age brought natural disasters. Eventually, large-scale peasant uprisings broke out. Li Zicheng captured Beijing, and the Chongzhen Emperor hanged himself on Coal Hill. At that moment, the Manchus beyond Shanhai Pass had already risen to power. With the guidance of Wu Songui, they entered the pass, defeated Li Zicheng, and established the Qing dynasty. By this point, many historical names may sound familiar to those who enjoy Chinese history. The culture of the Qing dynasty is also one of the most widely recognized periods in the world. The Qing dynasty was the last feudal dynasty of China and the second unified dynasty established by a minority ethnic group. The early Qing emperors, such as Kang Shai, Yongzheng, and Qianlong, are very well known in history. The Qing, founded by the Manchus, once again achieved multi-ethnic unification. The territory reached its greatest extent. Social order was stable, the population grew rapidly, and agricultural production expanded into frontier regions. At the same time, however, the Qing strengthened ideological control. Literary inquisition cases were common, and scholars who showed even slight dissatisfaction could be executed. The policy of isolation became stricter and stricter. Except for limited trade in Guangzhou, contact with the outside world was almost cut off. While the Qing court was still confident in the idea of being the central kingdom of the world, the Western world was undergoing dramatic changes. The Industrial Revolution allowed European powers to rise quickly. With powerful ships and cannons, they forced open China's doors. The Opium War of 1840 became a turning point in Chinese history. In June 1900, a coalition force was assembled by the British Empire, the United States of America, the French Third Republic, the German Empire, the Russian Empire, the Empire of Japan, the Kingdom of Italy, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was composed of Austria and Hungary. These 8 nations formed a joint army of roughly 30,000 troops and advanced from Tianjin toward Beijing. The Qing forces were unable to withstand the assault. By early August, the capital had fallen. Empress Dowager Cixi, together with the Guangxu Emperor and a group of princes and high-ranking officials, disguised themselves in commoners' clothing and fled before dawn. They made a hurried escape and eventually retreated all the way to Xi'an. After the Allied forces entered Beijing, what did they do first? Later, the German commander Walter C. wrote a report to the German emperor. In his own words, he stated that the losses China suffered from destruction and looting could never be fully calculated, but the amount was undoubtedly enormous. He also mentioned that during the looting, there were many cases of assault against women, acts of cruelty, arbitrary killings, and fires set without cause, all of which increased the suffering of the local population. Beijing was divided into occupation zones by the foreign troops, each country taking control of its own section. There is an estimated figure that more than 1.6 million Chinese national treasures were taken overseas and are now held in more than 200 museums around the world. The number of objects in private collections cannot even be fully counted, and is estimated to exceed 10 million. A large portion of these lost cultural relics were taken during the 2 major catastrophes of the Eight-Nation Alliance and the earlier Anglo-French invasion. I remember visiting museums with foreign friends and hearing acclaim when they saw Chinese historical artifacts. Some would say, these were donated to us by the Chinese government. But unfortunately, many of the Chinese historical artifacts you see in museums today, if there is no clear label indicating the year of donation or the time of loan, were taken during the late Qing period and later entered museums in other countries. I understand that some foreign friends may disagree and believe this is impossible. However, historical records show that from the imperial palace alone, more than 2,000 treasures were lost. Among them were 24 jade bullets, 2 golden clocks marking the hours, and 1 jade horse. From the Temple of Heaven, 1,148 ritual objects were lost. From the altar of land and grain, 168 ritual objects disappeared. From a major Lama temple, 13 gilded Buddha statues, more than 4,300 bronze objects, more than 1,400 silk and embroidered pieces, and more than 1,600 engraved ink artworks were taken. There was also a monumental work called the Yongle Encyclopedia. It was compiled during the Yongle reign of the Ming dynasty. The complete work consisted of 22,877 volumes in 11,095 books. It was the largest encyclopedia of ancient China and included nearly all important texts known at the time. Only a few manuscript copies existed worldwide. When the Allied troops entered, many soldiers could not recognize the value of these books. Some were used as paving bricks, some were placed in horse troughs, and some were burned for warmth. The remaining copies were taken and scattered around the world. According to records, 307 volumes of the Yongle Encyclopedia held by the Hanlin Academy were lost during this event. Today, only a little more than 400 volumes survive worldwide, scattered among more than 30 institutions in 8 countries. And this is only one example of the documented losses. These events touch one of the deepest wounds in Chinese history. The entry of the Eight-Nation Alliance into Beijing in 1900 and the burning of the Old Summer Palace by the Anglo-French forces 40 years earlier are often mentioned together. They form part of what many Chinese people remember as the most painful moments of the so-called Century of Humiliation. In the northwest suburb of Beijing, in the Hedin area, there is a place called the Old Summer Palace. In 1707, the Kangxi Emperor of the Qing dynasty granted this land to his 4th son, who later became the Yongjang Emperor. The name meant that personal virtue should be complete and that political achievement should shine brightly, reflecting a father's expectations for his son. The Old Summer Palace covered more than 350 hectares. It held countless treasures collected over centuries, including calligraphy and paintings beyond measure. All of this was destroyed in 1860. The palace was burned in a great fire. In October 1860, the Anglo-French forces entered Beijing. On the 18th, several thousand British soldiers rushed into the palace grounds and began setting fires. The burning lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Even more tragic, some eunuchs, palace maids, and craftsmen who had not escaped were burned alive inside. It is said that 300 to 400 people died in the flames. This event caused international shock at the time. On November 25, 1861, the French writer Victor Hugo wrote an open letter to Captain Butler condemning the destruction of the Old Summer Palace. From that point on, China gradually became a semi-colonial and semi-feudal society. It endured repeated defeats, territorial losses, and heavy indemnities. From the Taiping Rebellion to the self-strengthening movement, from the 100 Days Reform to the Boxer movement, the Chinese people tried again and again to save their country, and again they failed. It was not until 1911, when the Xinhai Revolution broke out, that the Qing dynasty was overthrown. This also ended more than 2,000 years of imperial rule in China. The Republic of China was established, but it did not bring real peace. Warlords fought each other, and the people suffered. Japanese imperialism took advantage of the situation and launched a full-scale invasion of China. After 8 years of bitter resistance, China finally achieved victory. But soon after came civil war. In 1949, the People's Republic of China was founded, and a new chapter in Chinese history began. Now, after this brief overview of Chinese history, let us calculate in a simple way whether China truly has 5,000 years of history. Let us start from today and count backward. The China you see today is the People's Republic of China, founded in 1949. That is a little more than 70 years ago. Before that was the Republic of China, from the Xinhai Revolution in 1911, which overthrew the Qing dynasty, until 1949. That period lasted about 38 years. If we add these together, we have a little more than 100 years of modern history. The Qing dynasty was the last feudal dynasty in China. It was established in 1644 and ended in 1911, lasting 268 years. If we add those 200 years to the 100 years we just mentioned, we have already gone back nearly 400 years. That means that if we go back 400 years from today, we arrive at the late Ming and early Qing period. The Ming dynasty was founded in 1368 and ended in 1644, lasting 276 years. If we add those 270 years to the previous 400, we have now gone back more than 600 years. More than 600 years ago was the end of the Yuan dynasty. The Yuan dynasty began in 1271, when Kublai Khan declared the dynasty, and ended in 1368 when the Mongols retreated to the north. It lasted 97 years. Adding that to the previous 600 years, we have gone back more than 700 years. More than 700 years ago was the time when the Southern Song was fighting against the Mongols. The Song dynasty is a very interesting period. It is divided into the Northern Song and the Southern Song. The Northern Song began in 960 when Zhao Kuangyin established the dynasty after the Chengkao Mutiny, and it ended in 1127 when it was destroyed by the Jin dynasty. It lasted 167 years. The Southern Song began in 1127 and ended in 1279 when it was completely defeated by the Yuan dynasty. It lasted 152 years. Together, the two Song periods lasted 319 years. If we add that to the previous 700 years, we have now gone back more than 1,000 years. That means that if we go back 1,000 years from today, we are standing in the Northern Song period when the capital Bianjing was one of the most prosperous cities in the world. Before the Song dynasty was the Tang dynasty. The Tang was founded in 618 and ended in 907, lasting 289 years. If we add that to the previous 1,000 years, we have now gone back about 1,300 years. About 1,300 years ago was the height of the Tang dynasty during the Kaiyuan era. At that time, Chang'an was filled with merchants, envoys, and students from all over the world. If we go back a little further, about 1,400 years ago, we reach the Sui dynasty. The Sui lasted only 37 years, from 581 to 618, but the Grand Canal it built was used for more than 1,000 years. Before the Sui dynasty was the period of the Northern and Southern dynasties, a time of division that lasted 369 years, from the fall of the Eastern Jin in 420 to the reunification under the Sui in 589. Adding this to the previous years, we have now gone back more than 1,700 years. About 1,700 years ago was the time of the Eastern Jin and the 16 kingdoms. Nomadic groups in the north moved south, while scholars in the south gathered in bamboo groves, drinking wine and discussing philosophy. Before that was the Jin dynasty, divided into the Western Jin and the Eastern Jin. The Western Jin lasted from 265 to 316, only 51 years. The Eastern Jin lasted from 317 to 420, 103 years. Together they lasted 154 years. If we add that to the previous count, we have now gone back more than 1,900 years. If we continue going further back, the Three Kingdoms period lasted only about 60 years, from 220 when Cao Pai declared himself emperor to 280 when the Western Jin reunified the country. Yet it is one of the most familiar periods in Chinese history. If we add those 60 years, we have now gone back a full 2,000 years. In other words, if we step back 2,000 years from today, we arrive at the late Eastern Han, a time of chaos and rising heroes. Before that was the long-lasting Han dynasty, divided into the Western Han and the Eastern Han. The Western Han began in 202 before the Common Era, when Liu Bang founded the dynasty, and it ended in the year 8 when Wang Mang seized power. It lasted 210 years. The Eastern Han began in 25 when Liu Shu restored the dynasty, and ended in 220 when Cao Pai forced the abdication of the last Han emperor. It lasted 195 years. Together, the two Han periods lasted 405 years. Adding that to the 2,000 years we have already counted, we have now gone back about 2,400 years. Around that time was the Warring States period when Confucius, Laozi, and Mozi had just left behind their wisdom, and the lively debates of the 100 schools of thought were coming to an end. If we trace back further to the Qin dynasty, although it was short-lived, lasting only 15 years from 221 before the Common Era to 206 before the Common Era, it was the first to unify China. Adding those 15 years, we are still around 2,400 years in the past. That was the time when the 7 major states of the Warring States period were fighting fiercely. Before the Qin came the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou was the longest dynasty in Chinese history, lasting about 800 years. It is divided into the Western Zhou and the Eastern Zhou. The Western Zhou began in 1046 before the Common Era and ended in 771 before the Common Era, lasting 275 years. The Eastern Zhou began in 770 before the Common Era and ended in 256 before the Common Era, when it was destroyed by Qin, lasting 515 years. Together they lasted 790 years. Adding that to the previous 2,400 years, we have now gone back more than 3,200 years. The Shang dynasty, as the first Chinese dynasty with written evidence from its own time, is traditionally dated from around 1600 before the Common Era to 1046 before the Common Era, lasting about 554 years. Adding that to the previous 3,200 years, we have now gone back about 3,700 years. Before the Shang was the Xia dynasty. For a long time, the Xia existed mainly in legend, but based on ancient texts and archaeological discoveries at the Erlitou site, scholars estimate that the Xia began around 2070 before the Common Era and ended around 1600 before the Common Era, lasting about 470 years. Adding that to the previous 3,700 years, we have now gone back more than 4,100 years. Before the Xia, we reach the legendary age of the Yellow Emperor. According to traditional accounts, the Yellow Emperor lived around the 27th century before the Common Era, roughly around 2,700 before the Common Era. From 2,700 before the Common Era to today is about 4,700 years, close to 5,000 years. If we include even earlier legendary figures such as the Yan Emperor and Shennong, then the idea of 5,000 years becomes complete. I remember once discussing this topic with a friend. I said, "This method comes from ancient China." He replied, "Oh yes, of course, everything comes from China." That was not a very friendly response. When people say something originated in China, it is not about claiming ownership over everything. It is simply because China, as a country with a long recorded history, can often trace certain practices back through historical records. It is a discussion about historical development, not a declaration of exclusivity. If we really want to compare origins, we would need to place the histories of the four ancient civilizations, ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient India, and China, side by side in time. As generations pass and technology advances, our understanding of ancient history may also change. Even the concept of the four ancient civilizations has begun to be reconsidered and divided into different phases. Every civilization has answered human questions in its own way. If we trace everything back far enough, perhaps all nations share a common origin. As early as the 16th century, geographers noticed something curious. If you look at a world map, the west coast of Africa and the east coast of South America seem to fit together like two broken pieces of a cookie. In the early 20th century, a German meteorologist named Alfred Wegener developed this idea further. He proposed that the Earth once had a single landmass that existed for about 100 million years. Later, driven by forces inside the Earth, it broke apart and drifted, eventually forming the 7 continents we see today. And this process is still continuing. So when Chinese people say 5,000 years of civilization, what they have in mind is a long and continuous river of time. It begins with the legendary Yellow Emperor, flows through the ancient dynasties of Xia, Shang, and Zhou, through the strength of Qin and Han, through the prosperity of Tang and Song, through the changes of Yuan, Ming, and Qing, and continues into the present. When people say that China has 5,000 years of civilization, or that a certain technology first appeared in ancient China, it is both a historical summary and a cultural identity. It is not about a single dynasty, but about the continuity and transformation of a civilization across a long span of time. This idea itself has become part of how people today understand history and culture. If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to give the show a like, subscribe, and share it with someone you think would enjoy it too. Every listen, every like, and every share truly makes a difference. It directly shapes how far this program can go, and it gives me the motivation to keep digging into the sources, keep asking questions, and keep telling these fascinating stories of history and culture in a clear and engaging way. Thank you for spending this time with me. I will see you in the next episode.